Konnichiwa. Today we're going to talk about one of those words that has a huge list of apparently unconnected meanings if you take the English-Japanese dictionary seriously, which makes it feel very difficult. But as is usual in these cases, the real problem is simply trying to fit the square peg of English definition into the round hole of Japanese. So if we take a look at the word, we'll be able to understand what it really means and how it really works. The word is shidai. According to the dictionary, it can mean depending on, as soon as, immediately upon, in accordance with, order, program, precedence, circumstances, course of events, and then we have what the conventional textbooks like to call a grammar point, shidai ni, which means gradually in the sense of gradually progress into a state. So, how do we make sense of all this? Well, let's start by looking at shidai. Shidai is made up of two kanji and it's a noun. And you ought to know that as soon as I say it's made up of two kanji and nothing else, we know that it's a noun. That's all it can be. And the two kanji are this first one, which is the kanji we use in tsugi, next, and that's what it means, next. And this one, dai, which is the Japanese ordinal. Now, what's an ordinal? In English, an ordinal is the st in first, the nd in second, the rd in third, the th in fourth, etc. In Japanese, fortunately, we only have one ordinal for every number, and it's dai, and we put it before the number, not afterwards. So if we want to talk about the third episode of an anime, we say dai san wa. So the dai is the rd, the san is the 3, and wa is the counter for stories or episodes. So we have the tsugi kanji, the next kanji, whose regular on reading is shi, and we have dai, meaning ordinal sequence, number in sequence. So what it means is next thing in sequence, next thing in order. And one more thing we need to know about this word is that it generally works by attaching to another noun. And this gives us a kind of compound. So if we attach toke to ude, ude is telling us about the toke. Ude doke is an arm clock, a wristwatch. If we attach suna to doke, then we have a sand clock, an hourglass. And similarly, we form these noun compounds with shidai and whatever it's attached to. And the simplest use of this is where it replaces the English expression as soon as or immediately upon. So, if we say, wakari shidai odenwa shimasu, we're saying, as soon as it becomes known, wakaru, become known, literally do known, do understandable. As soon as it becomes understandable, I'll call you. But you see that we have here the I stem of wakaru, do understandable, which is wakari. And we're creating a compound noun, which means next thing in sequence after doing understandable is that I'll call you. As soon as it becomes understandable, as soon as we know the situation, I'll call you. Shokuji no yoi ga deki shirai taberu. So although here we actually have a logical clause, shokuji no yoi ga dekiru, preparations for the meal are completed, literally come out, we actually have the stem of dekiru here, which is deki, and that's attached to shidai. So the next thing in sequence after the preparations being completed is eat. As soon as the preparations for the meal are finished, we'll eat. And from this logic, we then get what seems to be a completely different idea in English, which is depending upon. So we might say, sore wa tenki shidai da. In English we'd say, that depends on the weather. But in Japanese, what they're saying is, that follows directly from the weather. And as you see, it's a different way of putting it, but it means fundamentally the same thing. Kare no kotae wa kibun shirai da. Now, that means his answer follows directly from his mood. In other words, his answer depends on what mood he's in. And a useful phrase to know here is te atari, should I? Te atari is te, hand, and atari, touch or contact. Te atari, should I, means whatever one can lay one's hands on, whatever comes to hand. So, te atari shidai, hon o yomu, I read whatever book comes to hand. Reading a book follows directly from hand touch of a book, literally. Te atari shidai can be used in all kinds of constructions. I eat whatever comes to hand, I read whatever comes to hand, I throw whatever comes to hand at the neighbours. And as you see, it's the noun form of this verb touch, ataru, which is atari, which attaches to shirai. Another useful trick is that we can attach shidai directly to a person. So if we say, anata shidai desu, we're essentially saying it's up to you. It follows directly from you. Now, this wouldn't be expressed in English as depends on. And in fact, if we wanted to say it all depends on you in Japanese, we'd have to use a different kind of construction altogether. Within the Japanese meaning spectrum, what anata shidai da means is it follows directly from you, it's up to you, it's not up to anybody else, it doesn't follow from me, it doesn't follow from anybody else, it follows directly from you, it's up to you. The important thing to understand here is that while the English meaning spectrum and the Japanese meaning spectrum differ, in Japanese terms we're dealing with the same fundamental idea all the time. It's not a random selection of ideas the way it looks as if it is when you see it in an English-Japanese dictionary. From here we get meanings like according to, nedan wa shina shidai de chigau, which literally means the price differs directly following the goods. Now, if the goods are the same, which they usually are in this kind of a construction, then it would mean the quality of the goods, just as kenki shidai means the quality of the weather, the type of weather, and kibun shidai means the quality of somebody's mood, the type of mood. So, shina shidai means the type of goods, the quality of goods. Now, we can still use the depending translation here and not the according to translation. We could say the price depends on the quality of the goods. However, if we use an expression like mibun shidai ni kurasu, we're saying live according to one's station in life, according to one's means. We can't use depend here in English, but as you see, as far as Japanese goes, it's exactly the same idea. Mibun isn't quite translatable, but it means one's position in life, one's status, and it can, particularly in modern times, mean how much money one has. Now, in some cases, and this is where it becomes a little more extended, shidai, next in sequence, can represent the whole sequence. So in these cases, it can mean things like a process, a set of circumstances, a course of events. So one might say, それはこんな次第だった. It was this kind of situation. It was this kind of a sequence of events. Now we also have what the textbooks would call the grammar point, shidai ni. This is simply the standard practice of taking a noun, shidai is a noun, and using it adverbially to describe a verb. And doing something shidai ni in a shidai manner is as a sequence of steps or gradually. So, Cheshire neko wa shidai ni kieta. The Cheshire cat disappeared gradually. Or, yoru wa shidai ni nagaku naru. The nights are growing longer, day by day, step by step. And this always implies a process taking place over time, either in definite stages or not, but taking place over time, bit by bit. And because this is put forward as a grammar point, it can be a bit confusing. What we need to notice is that not every use of shirai that is followed by ni corresponds to this so-called grammar point. The real issue here, which doesn't tend to get explained, is that when shirai is not modified by another noun, and it's on its own, acting as an independent adverb, that's when it has this meaning. So in the example we saw earlier, Mibun shidai ni kurasu. That isn't an example of this. It is being used adverbially, but what's modifying kurasu is not shidai on its own, but the compound mibun shidai. So these are the fundamental uses of shidai. They seem very different if you look at them through English glasses, but if you look at them as they are, I think we can see that shidai works pretty much the same way all the time. If you have any questions about shidai or any other words that you'd like me to discuss, please put them in the comments below and I will answer as usual. If you have any other questions or comments, of course, they go in the same place. I'd like to thank my Gold Kokeshi patrons, my producer angels who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. It's because you support this project, not just financially, and showing me that even though we're growing rather slowly for a project of this revolutionary nature, there are people who really care about it. Thank you. Thank you for caring. And all of you, thank you for following, thank you for subscribing, thank you for learning. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします。Class dismissed.